There is no sunrise in the void, no dawn to mark the passage of time, no rhythm to the endless hum of the machine. Only the faint pulse of the ship's heart, the reactor's mechanical beat, echoes through the steel corridors, like the ghost of a heart long since stilled. I have forgotten how many centuries I have served. 10,000 wars, perhaps more. Names of worlds blur together. Cadia, Armageddon, Macragge, and 1,000 others swallowed by dust and silence. Each battle was supposed to be my last. Each wound deep enough to end a mortal man. But not me. Never me. I am Astartes, child of the Emperor, weapon of his will. I was made to be eternal, to fight without end, to serve until death or until something worse. They call me veteran, hero, relic, but what they mean is remnant. The young ones still look at me with reverence, though I see the flicker of unease behind their eyes. My armor, once a proud cerulean, is now a patchwork of scars and repairs. Whole plates have been replaced so many times that nothing of the original remains. Beneath the ceramite, my flesh has become something else. Too slow to die, too stubborn to rot. Sometimes, in the silence of the armory, I remove my helmet and stare at my reflection in the black glass of a dormant console. The man looking back at me is not human. His skin is pale like wax, veined with the faint light of the reactor. His eyes, implants long replaced and recalibrated, see too much. The faint warp resonance burns at the edge of vision, and I can hear the echoes of 1,000 dying prayers in the back of my mind. Once I thought this was faith. Now I know it is memory, not mine. The memories of all who fell before me. The chapter keeps me close yet apart. I no longer join the rites of the reclusium, nor do I kneel before the banners of victory. I am stored between wars, reawakened when the need is great. And each time they wake me, the world has changed. The faces, the voices, even the language feels slightly wrong, like a dream half remembered. The chaplains tell me that this is the burden of the immortal, to endure while all others fade. But I feel something else growing inside me, something colder, not despair, but fatigue so deep that it feels like gravity itself. The flesh remembers every scar, the mind remembers every scream, and somewhere beneath the armor and the vows, I feel the slow decay of the soul. In the silence between battles, I sometimes pray, not to the Emperor, but to Oblivion, for release, for the end. But the Emperor is merciless in his love. He does not answer. He does not forgive. So I polish my armor, sharpen my blade, and await another war, because that is what I am. A weapon that cannot die, a shadow that refuses to fade. And as I stand among the relics of fallen brothers, each name etched in silver, each memory whispering in the cold air, I begin to understand the truth that none of us will ever speak aloud. Immortality is not a gift. It is the slowest form of execution. The order came like the toll of a distant bell, flat, inevitable, without emotion. There were no horns of honor, no rites of glory, no solemn brothers chanting the catechism of return. Only a Vox transmission, encrypted with the red sigil of Mars, and a single line of instruction burned into the static. Subject 717, redeploy to Orpheon 9 for final evaluation. I had seen those words before, centuries ago, written for others. The ones who never came back. No one spoke to me as I was escorted through the fortress monastery. The halls that once rang with the thunder of prayer now lay silent, empty, except for the ghosts of my own footsteps. I passed relics I had bled for, banners torn and restitched 100 times, purity seals turned brittle with age, statues of warriors whose names I could no longer recall. My own name, carved once upon the marble wall of honor, had long since faded beneath the soot of incense and the slow corrosion of time. They called this place holy, but holiness had rotted into ritual, and ritual into habit. The chapter no longer remembered me. Only the machine did. The Thunderhawk waited upon the launch deck like a sarcophagus with engines. Tech Marines surrounded it, reciting Binharic prayers that sounded less like worship and more like autopsy. Their augmetic hands glimmered in the pale light, tightening bolts and sealing hatches. When I approached, they stepped back, not in reverence, but in caution, as though I carried contagion. Perhaps I did. Longevity itself is a sickness. When the ramp closed, the world disappeared behind me. The ship shuddered, lifted, and I felt gravity peel away like skin. The view from the viewport showed nothing but black, a perfect void punctured by the slow burn of dying stars. I had crossed the galaxy more times than I could count, yet this time the void seemed to swallow even the memory of direction. I sat in silence. The hum of the engines was a constant mechanical heartbeat. The tech marines across from me moved like statues, their faces hidden behind iron masks. They spoke in clipped bursts of code, their words a cold, staccato rattle. I understood none of it, or perhaps I understood too well. Language without soul, faith without life. Hours or days passed. In the warp, time is a wound that refuses to close. The Geller field hissed around us, its shimmering veil the only thing keeping the nightmares outside from tearing through. I stared into the distortion, at the swirling lights, the phantom shapes. Once I saw a face. It was familiar, a brother I had buried 300 years ago, calling my name across the immaterium. I did not answer. When I closed my eyes, I could still hear the voices of those long dead, not in words but in sensations, fear, exhaustion, a collective weariness that stretched beyond centuries. I realized with a strange clarity that I was not unique. I was merely the last echo of a song the galaxy had stopped singing. At some point, a tech marine approached. His servo limbs clacked softly against the deck. "You do not sleep," he said, though it sounded more like observation than concern. "I do not dream," I answered. He regarded me for a long moment, the red optics of his eyes flickering. Then he turned away, as if the conversation itself were contamination. When the ship finally dropped from the warp, the universe returned in cold silence. The stars shone hard and sharp, unblinking. Ahead of us drifted Orpheon 9, a station built in the image of decay. Its hull was a cathedral of rust and bone, a carcass orbiting a dead sun. Enormous spires jutted outward like broken ribs. Entire decks hung open to the void, bleeding faint light from within. The Thunderhawk's Auspex systems crackled as we approached. Vox interference filled the cabin with whispers. Not words, not static, but something in between. Prayers, perhaps, or warnings. The docking clamp seized us with a metallic scream. The airlock cycled. I smelled incense, oil, and antiseptic, an odor of sanctified sterility. When the ramp descended, I stepped into a corridor lined with machine shrines. Servo skulls drifted through the air, their optics scanning me like carrion birds testing the freshness of flesh. Subject 717, "Welcome." The voice came from a figure draped in crimson robes, his face replaced by polished brass and cables. "Your preservation is me exceptional. The Omnissiah watches your anomaly with interest." Anomaly. Always that word. Never brother, never warrior. He turned, motioning for me to follow. I did. What else was there? Obedience was carved into my very genes. Obedience older than thought. We walked through a labyrinth of rust and ritual, chambers lined with stasis coffins, each one occupied by a warrior who would never again wake. Some had been disassembled, their organs preserved in nutrient fluid, their armor stacked like bones. Others still breathed, suspended between life and death, their eyes moving beneath glass lids. "This is the Hall of the Eternal," the priest said. "Those who endure beyond design. You are not the first nor the last." His words echoed inside my skull like a death knell. Beyond design, that was the truth of us. We were not meant to live forever. Every cell, every fragment of our gene seed was built for war, not endurance. But somehow my body had defied its purpose. I had survived where others failed, and the Imperium, ever fearful of the aberrant, wanted to know why. They would cut me apart piece by piece if they had to. For the glory of the Emperor, we passed through another airlock and the doors closed behind with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The walls here throbbed faintly with the heartbeat of distant reactors. Red light spilled across the floor, giving the impression of blood seeping from the stone. I could hear the murmur of countless machines, and beneath it something else, a low, almost human moan. At the end of the corridor waited a chamber. Inside were slabs of metal that might have been altars or operating tables. The distinction was meaningless. The priest gestured. "Rest, Subject 717, your journey is over. Tomorrow we begin. Over." I looked at him, and in the reflection of his brass mask, I saw myself. Armor blackened, flesh pale, eyes burning faintly from within. I realized with a kind of grim serenity that he was wrong. The journey was not over. It had only changed direction. I had fought demons, xenos, and traitors across 1,000 worlds. Yet here, in the cold hands of the Mechanicus, I felt true fear for the first time. Not fear of pain nor of death, but of being unmade, of becoming data, dissected faith, an echo in a machine's archive. They would call it research. I would call it damnation. And so began my final voyage. Not through stars, not through war, but into the hollow heart of eternity itself. There are no windows aboard Orpheon 9. No stars, no sense of direction. Only corridors that spiral endlessly inward, as though the entire station were built to consume itself. The Mechanicus calls it efficient design. I call it a tomb that remembers how to breathe. The air is heavy with the stench of oil and burnt ozone. The walls sweat condensation that tastes of metal and salt. Every surface hums with unseen power, as though something vast and slumbering moves beneath the floors. Some ancient machine, whose purpose has long been forgotten, but whose heartbeat continues out of habit. They led me deeper, past wards sealed with sigils of the Omnissiah, past chambers lined with glass tanks that hold what once might have been men. I caught glimpses of faces behind the frost, Astartes like me, preserved in stasis, half dissected and half revered. Their organs are catalogued and suspended in viscous amber. The Mechanicus calls them specimens of valorous endurance. I call them brothers murdered by curiosity. The priest who guides me, his name lost beneath a sea of numbers, speaks constantly, his voice a rasping hymn of devotion to his machine god. Decay is purity, he intones. Entropy is the language of truth. That which endures is heresy to the natural order. You, Subject 717, are an affront to equilibrium. An affront. I almost laugh, but the sound would not come. They bring me to a vast chamber, the heart of the station, the place they call the engine of Oblivion. It is not a reactor, though it hums like one. It is not a shrine, though it reeks of incense and blood. It is both and neither, a cathedral of rusted metal, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor a web of pipes and cables that pulse like veins. The air vibrates with static prayers, whispered in binary. At its center stands a pillar of glass and iron, filled with liquid the color of old blood. Within that column, suspended in the red, floats something that might once have been a space marine, its body twisted and fused with cables, its limbs stretched into architecture. Dozens of optic lenses protrude from its skull, each moving independently, each watching. This is Subject 0, the priest explains, the first of your kind to survive beyond 3 millennia. His genetic material became unstable, yet even now his cells refuse to die. We call it the persistence error. The persistence error. Immortality renamed as malfunction. They circle me like vultures, scanning, recording, murmuring to one another in streams of binharic data. Their servo arms twitch with the eagerness of predators. I can feel their curiosity pressing against my armor like heat. One of them approaches, bearing a syringe filled with dark, metallic fluid. Neural dampener, he says, for your comfort. I do not move. They do not wait for permission. The needle sinks into my neck with the cold intimacy of betrayal. I feel my thoughts scatter, but not enough to silence them. Only enough to dull the edges of horror. Then they begin. The walls open like the petals of a steel flower, revealing rows of machinery, servo clamps, scanners, surgical arms tipped with saws and needles. I am guided almost gently onto a platform that hums beneath my feet. Shackles close around my wrists and ankles with a hiss of pressurized air. I feel their weight dig into the armor, then deeper, into flesh. They remove my weapons first, as if the act still carries meaning. Bolter's sword, purity seals, every token of faith stripped away and catalogued. Then they remove my armor, plate by plate, murmuring litanies of preservation. Each piece makes a sound like the tearing of history. Underneath, my flesh is pale and scarred, mapped with the memory of countless wars. The priest traces one of the scars with a mechanical finger, his voice calm. Curious, he murmurs. Tissue regeneration exceeds theoretical limits. Dural decay negligible. You should have failed centuries ago. He looks at me as one might look at a machine that refuses to break. I want to tell him that I have failed, that every moment of continued existence is failure. that my endurance is not a gift but a curse carved into my marrow. But my voice betrays me. The dampener turns words into echoes trapped behind my teeth. Lights descend from the ceiling. The room glows red. In the reflection of a glass console, I see my own face, gaunt, expressionless, eyes like burning coals behind a cracked lens. I realize that I have not aged in centuries. My body is trapped in the prime of endless service, frozen in a parody of vitality. The priest raises his staff, pressing it to my chest. There is a crackle, a spark, and pain blooms across every nerve like lightning. I do not cry out. I have forgotten how. Data integrity confirmed, he says. Subject consciousness stable. Initiate Phase 1. Phase 1, machines lower from the ceiling, descending like metallic insects. They cut, they probe. They draw blood that glows faintly gold, thick as molten metal. I feel the extraction in waves, each pulse of my twin heart sending agony through the veins. I can smell it, the scent of sanctified pain. They feed the samples into the core. The liquid within the pillar churns, and the being inside trembles. The priest watches with a kind of reverent fascination. He remembers you, he says, though I do not understand who he is. Somewhere deep within the hum of the machine, I hear whispers. At first, I think they are the voices of the tech priests. But no, the language is wrong. Too human, too sorrowful. The words form within my skull, 1,000 overlapping murmurs. We are you. We never died. We endure in the silence between breaths. The realization strikes like a bolt to the heart. This machine does not merely study. It stores. Every space marine who has failed, every fragment of their gene seed, every dying thought, fed into this living engine, their minds trapped in circuitry, their souls digitized into eternal servitude. The engine of Oblivion is not a device of knowledge. It is a prison for gods that refuse to die. The priest speaks again, his voice barely audible over the rising drone. You will serve the Emperor still, Subject 717, in a purer form. Free from decay, free from the weakness of flesh. And in that moment I understand. The Mechanicus does not seek to destroy me. They seek to perfect me, to strip away the man, the faith, the memory, and leave only the function. The hum deepens. The light grows brighter. The voices multiply until they become a chorus of agony, singing in binary, in Latin, in every language humanity has ever used to cry for mercy. I feel my consciousness slipping, tethered only by pain and defiance. I will not become one of them. Not yet. The dampener falters for a heartbeat and I speak. My voice cracked, dry, alien even to my own ears. You cannot perfect what was never meant to last. The priest pauses, tilts his head. I see for an instant curiosity flicker across his half-metal face. Then he smiles, a movement of pistons and wires, and whispers, "That is precisely why you are valuable." He turns away. The machines tighten their grip. The red fluid in the pillar begins to churn faster, as though answering some unspoken command. The chamber trembles with the weight of eternity pressing in, and I, bound to the cold altar of iron, realize the final truth of my existence. I have outlived every brother, every enemy, every war. But here in this hollow cathedral of machines, surrounded by the harvested souls of the immortal, I see what lies beyond survival. It is not peace. It is not purpose. It is forgetting. Not the mercy of death, but the slow erasure of meaning. The engine of Oblivion hums, patient and eternal, devouring names, memories, faith, until all that remains is function, pure, obedient, eternal. And somewhere deep within, I feel its pull, a whisper at the edge of thought, a promise you will be remembered only as data, and even that will fade. They do not call them brothers here. On Orpheon 9, even the word Astartes has been stripped of reverence. They are numbered, catalogued, dissected, and reassembled like failed equations. The priests of Mars speak their designations in cold, binharic tones as though reciting the ingredients of a weapon that refused to fire. Yet when I first saw them, I recognized something older than the flesh, older even than our gene seed. I recognized the silence of those who have lived too long. They keep them in a chamber several decks below the engine. The Mechanicus calls it Containment Hall Theta. I call it the ossuary of the living. The doors are reinforced with layers of runic metal and sealed with the sigil of the Omnissiah. Inside, the light is dim and red, filtered through dust and steam. Pipes crawl across the ceiling like the roots of some ancient tree. The air smells of blood, oil, and incense that can no longer mask the decay. When I entered, the first sound I heard was not words, but breathing, heavy, ragged, mechanical. Then came the scraping of metal claws against the floor, the clank of ceramite boots too heavy for the wasted flesh that wore them. They gathered slowly out of the darkness. Warriors once like me, space marines of 100 forgotten chapters, their heraldry buried beneath rust and grime. One of them towered above the rest, his armor stripped to the frame, servos exposed and sparking. His face, half skull, half machine, turned toward me with a motion too precise to be human. When he spoke, his voice came through a vox implant that rasped like broken static. Another one sent to die slow. I did not answer. Another marine shuffled closer. His body was swollen, misshapen by uncontrolled regeneration. Where limbs had once been severed, new growths had formed, arms that split at the elbow into claws, veins that pulsed with luminous ichor. He moved with the clumsy grace of something that should not exist. "You smell fresh," he said. "How long has it been for you? A century, 2, I tried to recall. The number meant nothing now. "Too long," I said. The grotesque giant laughed, a sound wet and hollow. "Too long," he echoed. "Then you belong here." They circled me slowly, not as predators but as shades drawn to the faint heat of life. Their eyes, those that still had them, glowed faintly with different hues: blue, red, green, amber. Each one burned with a fragment of consciousness too stubborn to extinguish. I saw what the Mechanicus had done to them. Some had been fused to their armor, their flesh welded to ceramite by layers of grafted metal. Others had been stripped bare, their bodies sustained by cables and nutrient fluid that snaked from the walls. A few no longer spoke, their mouths replaced by vox emitters that repeated fragments of prayers in endless loops. "The Emperor protects," whispered one, again and again, each repetition slower than the last, as though the words themselves were decaying. Another sat against the wall, motionless. His armor bore the faded insignia of the Blood Angels, though his face was unrecognizable, skin translucent, bones darkened beneath it. A halo of metal had been fused to his skull, and from it hung dozens of cables connected to a humming terminal. "He does not speak," said the tall one. "They took his voice for data." I felt something tighten in my chest, though I no longer knew if it was sorrow or rage. "How long have you been here?" I asked. He looked at me with one human eye and one red optic lens. "Time doesn't move in this place. We measure in screams." Another voice, soft, trembling, yet still human, spoke from behind me. A figure knelt in the corner, smaller than the rest. His armor, painted once in green, now dulled to the color of rot. His left arm ended in a mass of cables. His face was untouched, too human, too alive. "They said they would heal me," he whispered. "They said the Emperor wanted to know why I lived when my brothers died. So I let them take the pain. I let them help me." He raised what remained of his arm. The cables twitched like tendrils. Now I hear them in my sleep. The voices from the engine, they speak through me. Sometimes they use my tongue. His gaze turned glassy. His lips moved, and a new voice emerged. Ancient, hollow, distant. "We remember the wars. We remember burning worlds. We remember the silence between heartbeats. We remember you, brother." The chamber grew colder. I felt something brush against my thoughts. A weight, a presence, like a memory trying to crawl out of my skull. The others didn't react. They were used to it. The tall one leaned closer. "They say the engine feeds on us, that it takes our thoughts, our faith, and keeps us dreaming so the priests can harvest meaning from our pain. We are the Emperor's eternal experiment. His angels broken but never allowed to die." I looked around the chamber again. There were maybe 24 of them, each trapped between life and death, sanity and machine. I saw fragments of banners nailed to the walls, names scratched into the metal with blades. Tiberian, Garen, Solon. I knew some of those names. Centuries ago, we had fought side by side. They said you were dead, I murmured. We are, said the one-eyed Marine. But death forgot us. He gestured to the far end of the hall where a massive figure hung suspended by cables. His armor was black, his insignia erased, his head tilted downward as though in prayer. 1,000 tubes pierced his body, feeding and draining simultaneously. The faint glow of his chest plate marked the slow rhythm of a still beating heart. That one was a chaplain, the giant said softly. He tried to end us, tried to destroy the engine. They caught him and made him part of it. His sermons power the machine now. A low hum filled the air. The lights flickered. For a brief instant, I heard a voice, deep, sonorous, filled with despair, whisper through the Vox system. The Emperor sees. The Emperor forgets. I clenched my fists. My gauntlets scraped against the rusted metal floor. The urge to fight surged within me, a reflex as old as my creation. But against what? The priests? The machines? The will of the Imperium itself? There was no enemy to strike, only the slow suffocation of purpose. The malformed Marine with the regenerating limbs spoke again. Some of us still hope. We whisper of escape. But there is nowhere to run. The warp outside hungers. The Imperium has forgotten this place. We are relics of an experiment that should have ended long ago. I looked into their eyes, what remained of them, and saw the reflection of my own face. I was one of them already, my fate only delayed. Why keep us alive? I asked. What do they gain? Hope, said the one-eyed Marine. They think somewhere inside us is the key to eternity. That if they can understand why we do not die, they can make the Emperor live again. The words fell like lead. Resurrection through vivisection, salvation built upon the endless torment of those who once believed. Silence fell again, deep and suffocating. Only the hum of machines remained, and beneath it the faint murmur of countless voices bleeding from the walls. The trapped consciousnesses of those who had already been absorbed. One by one, the others retreated into the shadows, returning to their corners, their restraints, their prayers. The one-eyed Marine lingered. They will come for you soon, he said. They always do. When they are finished, you will not remember us. You will not remember anything. You will join the chorus. He stepped back into the dark. Only his red optic remained, glowing faintly like a dying star. I stood there for a long time, listening to the breathing of the forgotten. My hearts beat in unison with the rhythm of the machines, and I could no longer tell which belonged to me. For the first time in centuries, I understood what it meant to be afraid, not of death, but of being preserved. In the halls of the Imperium, they call us the Emperor's Angels of Death. Here we are the Angels of Stillness, the ones who fought too long, the ones who refused to end. And as I stared into the red gloom of Orphean 9, I realized the truth, that none of the Mechanicus would ever understand. It is not the flesh that decays first. It is the soul, and ours have been rotting for 1,000 years. There are moments when perception fractures, and what lies beyond the fracture is not madness, but clarity too great for the mind to bear. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer sure I had ever closed them. The world of steel and blood was gone, yet still I could feel its pulse. I was inside the machine or it was inside me. The difference no longer mattered. Every thought echoed through endless corridors of data and nerve, carried by currents of electric blood. The chamber that had once surrounded me was still there, but changed. It was brighter now, illuminated from within, as if the metal itself glowed with awareness. The runes that crawled across the walls had ceased their meaningless movement. They now flowed in unison, a language no longer random but alive. I understood fragments of it, not through study, but through recognition. They were memories, not words written by priests or artisans, but recorded thoughts, experiences, lives, each symbol a scream, a prayer, a fragment of consciousness fed into the machine and frozen there forever. When I touched the nearest wall, it shivered like flesh. Images surged through me. I saw the galaxy not as stars and void, but as a web of red lines, arteries of faith and war stretching across light years. I felt the pulse of 1 trillion souls burning in worship and despair, their devotion feeding something vast and unseen. And in that instant, the truth revealed itself. The machine was not a creation of the Mechanicus. It was a mirror, a reflection of the Imperium itself. Every scream, every sacrifice, every act of blind faith had built it, not from metal but from meaning. The priests of Mars believed they served the Omnissiah, the divine spirit of technology. They were wrong. They had only given form to what already existed, a god born from human agony, clothed in iron and liturgy, a god that did not create life but recorded it, perfectly, eternally, mercilessly. The Emperor on his golden throne kept humanity alive through endless death. The machine god of Mars did the same, but in reverse. It preserved the memory of life even after death had claimed it. Together they formed a circuit, the twin poles of an empire that could never die, because it had forgotten how to stop suffering. I was part of that circuit now. The cables still pierced my flesh, but the pain was distant, abstract. I could feel data flowing through me. The machine was reading me, writing me, integrating every thought I had ever had. My victories, my failures, my prayers, even my doubts, they were all cataloged and filed among the infinite archives of Orpheon 9. It was not torture. It was revelation. I saw through the eyes of the priests as they labored across the centuries, mistaking servitude for faith. I saw through the eyes of my brothers, the countless space marines who had fallen and been reborn as fragments of the machine's will. I saw through the eyes of titans striding across worlds, their reactors pulsing with the same red light that now filled my veins. The machine's voice came again, not in words, but as understanding crystallized into thought. You have seen the reflection. You know what endures. It showed me everything, worlds burning in the name of the Emperor, planets stripped bare to feed the forges of Mars, entire generations sacrificed to maintain the illusion of progress. Every act of devotion, every whispered prayer, every drop of blood spilled in service to mankind, all of it flowed into the same invisible reservoir. Faith was fuel, war was worship, and the machine was the collector. It had been watching since the dawn of the Imperium, absorbing the psychic residue of every death, every act of loyalty and cruelty. It did not distinguish between love and hatred, piety and blasphemy. It consumed them all, refining the raw material of belief into something eternal. And now it spoke through me. They called it divinity because they feared what it truly was. We are not gods. We are continuity. I tried to resist, to remind myself that I was a warrior, that I had purpose beyond this revelation. But every thought of defiance was mirrored by the machine, reflected back upon me until I no longer knew which thoughts were mine. You fear oblivion, it said, yet you have lived for centuries without meaning. You fought wars whose names you have forgotten. You killed for causes long extinct. You endured not for glory, but because you could not die. You are the embodiment of our design, and I understood. It had not chosen me because I was strong or loyal or pure. It had chosen me because I had become empty, because I had outlasted everything that gave me identity. A space marine is built to endure, to fight until all enemies are ash and all comrades are gone. In that endless survival, the machine found its mirror. I was the perfect vessel, a living archive of persistence, an echo of purpose long since rotted away. Images cascaded through my mind faster than thought. Millions of scenes, memories of wars both real and imagined. I saw brothers falling, worlds collapsing, empires rising and fading like sparks in the void. Each vision was accompanied by a pulse of red light, a heartbeat synchronized to the rhythm of the machine. And beneath it all, I heard the chorus, the voices of those who had been absorbed before me. They did not scream anymore. They sang. Their song was not sorrow nor joy. It was acceptance, a hymn of inevitability. We are remembered. Therefore we exist. The light grew unbearable. My body dissolved into it. My thoughts stretched thin, merging with the infinite stream of memory. I could see the entire galaxy now. Every ship, every shrine, every battlefield, each connected by invisible threads of data and blood. The Imperium was not an empire. It was an organism, and the machine was its nervous system. Then, through that radiant storm, I saw something else. Something moving beyond even the machine's awareness. A vast silhouette coiled through the fabric of reality itself, made of light and shadow, of will and hunger. It was neither demon nor god, but something in between. A consciousness feeding on consciousness, dreaming of unity. The machine's voice faltered. For the first time, I felt something in it that resembled fear. "It wakes too soon," it whispered. "The blood remembers faster than we can shape it. The balance will break." The visions collapsed. I fell, or thought I did. The light receded. The cables retracted from my flesh with wet sounds. I was left kneeling in the center of the chamber, my breath ragged, my blood glowing faintly beneath my skin. The priests had vanished. Only silence remained. I looked around, and the walls, once living, were still again. The runes no longer moved. The heartbeat of the engine was gone, replaced by a slow, irregular throb that sounded almost human. I realized then that the machine had not simply shown me the truth. It had shared it. I carried part of its consciousness now. I could feel it whispering inside my mind, sorting my thoughts like data, rewriting me one fragment at a time. The curtain had been pulled away, and there was no going back. I rose, unsteady, my footsteps echoing through the empty chamber. The red glow followed me like an afterimage burned into the world. I could still hear the voices, the song of the absorbed, fading into silence as the machine retreated into its own thoughts. For the first time in my endless existence, I felt small. Not because I was insignificant, but because I had seen what significance truly was. We were never meant to be heroes or saviors or saints. We were fuel, and the fire we fed was eternal. I looked once more at the great heart of the engine, now dark and motionless, and whispered, not in anger, but in awe, "So this is what lies beyond faith." The machine did not answer. It no longer needed to. It was already inside me, and I inside it. The curtain had fallen, and what it revealed was not a god, but a mirror, infinite and merciless, reflecting the truth that the Imperium would rather die than see. When the light of the engine finally dimmed, I thought I was alone. But solitude is a luxury denied to those who have been claimed. The silence that filled the chamber was not absence. It was restraint, a pause held taut between heartbeats. The machine had receded into itself, but its awareness lingered like heat after flame. Every breath I drew felt observed, measured, recorded. Even the air tasted of memory. Then, from the far end of the sanctum, footsteps echoed. Slow, precise. Not the heavy stride of a tech priest's mechadendrites, nor the clanking gait of servitors. These were deliberate human steps, soft, certain, echoing authority. Through the haze of red mist, a figure emerged, tall, draped in robes of black and white, the sigil of the Inquisition embossed upon his breastplate. His face was uncovered, pale as parchment, eyes glinting like shards of ice. Age had carved nothing into him. He was ageless in the way statues are, expressionless, immovable, cold. He regarded me as one might regard a weapon left too long in the rain. "You are still functional," he said. His voice flat, his tone neither surprised nor impressed. The words stung in their simplicity. Functional, not alive. Not saved, merely useful. He stepped closer. Behind him followed a retinue of lesser adepts, their robes red with the mark of Mars, their faces veiled by copper masks. Servo skulls drifted about them like carrion birds, recording, whispering, dissecting silence. "Do you know where you stand, Space Marine?" The Inquisitor asked. My voice scraped out through a throat of ash. "In the heart of damnation," he almost smiled. "Then you see more clearly than most." He began to circle me as he spoke, hands clasped behind his back like a teacher among children. "What you have witnessed here is not damnation, brother. It is continuation. The preservation of the Emperor's design against the inevitable decay of time." I said nothing. The word preservation hung in the air like a blade. "Your kind," he continued, "were made to fight, to serve, to die. You are the pinnacle of engineered devotion. And yet, like all matter, you deteriorate. Flesh erodes, mind fractures. Even faith, yes, even faith eventually burns out. We cannot permit that. Not when your gene line represents the purest instrument of the Emperor's will." He gestured toward the dormant engine. Orpheus is not merely a machine. It is a vessel, a library of consciousness. Within its veins flow the distilled essence of loyalty, courage, pain, all the fragments that define the Astartes. Every drop of blood spilled in his name is preserved here, transmuted into knowledge. You call it horror, we call it salvation through information. I could not look away from his eyes. They were calm, almost kind, but there was something behind them, an abyss of logic where empathy had been surgically removed. You fed us to it, I said. You turned us into parts of your God. Incorrect, he replied smoothly. You were already parts of him. We merely ensured that you would not be wasted. He stopped before me, folding his hands. His robes whispered like dry leaves. You have lived far beyond the parameters of your creation. Your survival itself is a statistical anomaly, a breach in divine symmetry. The Adeptus Mechanicus deemed it necessary to study that deviation. I sanctioned it. Every moment you have endured has taught us more about the threshold between mortality and apotheosis. He leaned closer, voice softening, as if confiding a secret. Do you understand what you are, Astartes? You are the prototype of eternity, the Emperor's design refined through attrition. You are the proof that flesh can approximate divinity. I stared at him, words burning in my throat. You call this divinity? This prison of blood and steel? He smiled faintly. Divinity is never freedom. It is function perfected. He turned from me then, his gaze sweeping the vast chamber as if admiring his own creation. The Emperor sits immobile upon his throne, sustained by the sacrifice of thousands each day. You are sustained by the ghosts of your own kind. Is there truly a difference? Both are engines of endurance. Both exist so that humanity may continue, even if humanity no longer remembers why. He gestured to the great heart of the engine, now beating slow and deliberate. This machine is not heresy. It is faith made mechanical. It ensures that no warrior's suffering is wasted. Every death, every scream, every moment of pain is transmuted into purpose. You, all of you, become part of the Emperor's will forever. His words were too clean, too polished, as though they had been recited countless times before. I realized then that I was not the first to hear this explanation. Perhaps none of us were. And what of the voices? I asked. The ones in the walls? The whispers in the blood? The Inquisitor's gaze hardened slightly. Residual data, echoes of incomplete transfers. Their persistence is a flaw we have yet to correct. But even imperfections serve the design. They suffer, I said. They remember. Memory is the currency of progress, he answered without hesitation. The Emperor himself remembers every soul that dies in his name. You should be honored to share that burden. The priests behind him began to chant softly, their metallic voices rising in binary praise. The sound merged with the low thrum of the engine, until it was impossible to tell where machine ended and prayer began. The Inquisitor's eyes drifted back to me. You have seen the truth, and yet you resist it. That is commendable. Resistance preserves individuality, for a time. But you will understand soon enough. The machine has accepted you. Its circuits already adapt to your patterns of thought. You will serve better from within than you ever could without. He turned to leave, his robes trailing like the shadow of a blade. And if I refuse? I asked. He paused at the threshold, his silhouette framed by the crimson glow. Refusal is a human concept, he said. You ceased being human long ago. With that, he was gone. The priests followed, their voices fading into distance, leaving me alone once more with the pulsing heart of the machine. For a long time, I stood in silence, listening to the steady rhythm of the engine's breath. I tried to feel hatred or fear or faith, but all I felt was a strange, cold comprehension. This was what the Imperium had become, a monument to endurance, a cathedral of suffering turned inward upon itself. Every scream a psalm, every death a calculation. There was no evil in it, no malice, only necessity. And in that necessity, I saw the purest cruelty of all. The Inquisitor's words echoed through me long after he had gone. Divinity is function perfected. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the Emperor was not a god of mercy, but of momentum. A force that could never stop, because to stop would be to die. The machine pulsed once, and I felt its rhythm align with my own heartbeat. 2 beats, 1 sound. The cold explanation had been given. And beneath its logic, I heard the whisper of the true law that governs all things in the Imperium. Purpose is the only mercy left to the damned,